Very good afternoon, everyone. I hope my voice is audible. Sorry for the slight delay in start. Let me just type on chat. You can give me a quick yes or no. Hope I am audible. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, you should be able to chat on the chat itself. I hope I'm audible, guys. Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Nagiredi. Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Sridhar. Good afternoon, Mr. Nagesh, Mr. Umesh, Mr. Raghu, Mr. Ravneet, Mr. Suhail, Mr. Mustafa. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to see the responses on chat. We'd like to keep the same motivation going. Mr. Imran, good afternoon. Okay, so we will start off shortly, but as we anyway wait for a few more audience to join us, I'd like to see how many of you are here. Obviously, you know the topic for today. We'll be talking about GST invoice challenges that will be addressed. How can we overcome some of the challenge? We have our tax veteran, our tax expert, Mr. Akela, who will be our chief speaker for the day. He will be in shortly once his introduction is done. But I'd like to see what is that you are expecting from today's session. Is there any specific points that you're looking forward to? You can use the chat in the meantime. I'd like to see some responses on that end. Thank you. So Mustafa says, okay, e-invoice basics and challenges. So Sandeep, considering the challenges, what is the way forward? Okay. Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure we'll be addressing the way forward today. Okay, anyone else? Anyone else who would like to tell us what is it that you're expecting from today's session? Uh, yeah, we'll be starting off in about 2 minutes. So thank you all for your patience. Mr. Sridhar says recent changes related to e-invoice. Okay. Okay, we have Mr. Shahul who says deferment of e-invoice within 7 days. Okay, okay. When can we expect that to happen? All right. I'm sure Mr. Akela will be able to answer that, Mr. Shahul. Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else? I do see some repeat participants here. I'm glad to see you all back. Okay, I will read this out. Mr. Nagesh, if we can raise e-invoice for old period, if missed out within 1 week, the restriction, then any request comes from any B2B party that we have considered the transaction as B2C in our GSTR1 portal will allow to amend this invoice from B2C to B2B, but we cannot generate e-invoice because of new restriction which is going to come. Okay. Okay. Looks like he's given us some information on this end. Thanks, Mr. Nagesh. Okay, great. I think we can get started. We have a healthy audience with us today. About 50 is what we have right now. We can expect a few more to join in. So very good afternoon to everyone. Once again, I hope my voice is audible, loud and clear. So we shall get started. I will introduce myself. I am Siddharth. I handle product marketing for web solutions, and I will also be your moderator for the day. So before I get started, I will be running through the company's introduction, a really short and quick introduction, followed by our speaker's introduction, and then I will hand it over to him, where he will be explaining the topic and the slides for today. Also, request all of you to use the Q&A and chat to put up any kind of questions during the session. We will take it up for sure. We have a dedicated Q&A session where our speaker will address every query that you have. So let's move forward. Web Solutions is the company that I represent. We were in fact part of Wipro e-Peripherals, Wipro back in those days. So we were initially into the dot matrix printers and toners cartridges manufacturing, which is why the e-Peripherals name has taken place, as you can see. And in 2000, the company decided to become an independent entity. So over the years, we have obviously expanded our offering, our product offering. We still have our printer offering, the managed print services. But what we exclusively have today is a digital portfolio, which has a DMS solution and a GST solution as well. More on that as we move forward. Here are some key highlights of our company. We have close to 530 customers, in fact. We are present in over 2,000 locations in India. We, in fact, won the Company of the Year award for 2022 for our document management and workflow automation solution. Let's move forward. This is our solution lineup. We have managed print services, which is the signature offering. We have some digital transformation solutions as well. GST, I'm sure all of you who are here today will relate to the GST solution. We, in fact, have a GST solution of our own, which takes care of filing, reconciliation, etc. More on that. We have a document management, our enterprise workflow automation solution. We have Ricoh printers on our portfolio, and we also have presence on the retail end. Moving forward, now, managed print services. This is what I will quickly explain each and every thing that you see here. The serial number will not take more than 2 minutes. So understanding managed print services, what that means is we offer asset management. So what we do in asset management is we offer you to handle your existing printer lineup. Your existing printer network is something that we handle. We also add new printers based on your requirement, and we will charge on a paper print basis on a periodic level. We also undertake complete service and support, and we are also known as India's #1 MPS company. Moving to serial number 2, as I mentioned, we are actually India's authorized Ricoh distributor. What we also have here is we have about 10 to 15 printers on our portfolio from Ricoh, and we undertake complete service and support. Serial number 3 is our GST solution. As I was explaining, the solution takes care of filing and reconciliation. We are also exclusively a GST Suvidha provider appointed by the government itself in 2017. Aside this, we have modules for e-way bill, e-invoicing. You can cancel your IRN, you can generate IRN. There is no limit for e-invoice bulk uploads. These are some core highlights that I mentioned, and we also undertake complete ERP integration. Various vendors such as SAP, Oracle, Microsoft Dynamics, NetSuite, and other API integrations as well. We also integrate to Tally, just so I mentioned. Moving to serial number 4, we have our document management solution, which takes care of your basic document storage in a centralized repository. We are hosted on the cloud. Aside this, we have a workflow automation engine built to the platform for business process automation. And lastly, we have a digital signature solution as well. We are integrated with eMudra, who is the government provider for digital signature. Some of our clients, a quick view, a portfolio of our clients. This is a mixed bag, obviously. We have a multiple solution lineup. These are all customers who are using different solutions. Okay, so as I move forward to introducing our speaker for the day, I would like to launch a quick poll since we cannot do a demo or anything during this webinar because it is a fully dedicated webinar with our speaker. I'm going to launch a poll to see if we have anyone who's currently exploring GST solutions who are looking forward to changing their GST vendor for the current financial year. Let me leave this on for the next 1 minute. Please note that we will be able to arrange a free demo of our solution for you. Based on your availability, we can give you a complete free demo. And we can understand what exactly your challenges is. We can even show you a demo of our e-Invoice module, or if it's just the filing and reconciliation part, reports, all of that can be done. I will leave this on for the next 1 minute. Yeah. Okay. Another 10 seconds and I'll turn it off. Once again, thank you all for joining. I would like to mention that we will have multiple polls launched during the webinar. So we would like the interaction to be great as usual. Most of our webinars are highly interactive. We'd like to keep that going. Okay. I'll end the poll. Thank you for your responses. So let's move forward. Okay. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker for the day, Mr. Akela A.S. Prakasha Rao, who is almost our in-house speaker now. We've been doing a lot of webinars over the last 1.5 years. So I would not mention him as a chief speaker or a guest speaker anymore. He is in fact our own speaker if you look at it at this point. So let me get into the introduction. Mr. Akela is an independent indirect tax advocate. He graduated in 1989 from BITS Pilani, that is Birla Institute of Technology, in electricals and electronics engineering. He is also a gold medal holder who completed LLB from Andhra University in the year 2001. Mr. Akela is a certified fraud examiner, but currently not active on that part. He worked in the Central Board of Indirect Tax and Customs, that is CBIC, from the years 1994 to 2008. He's also worked for KPMG Bangalore from 2008 to 13. His other major stints were with Toyota Kirloskar Motor, that is Bidadi, from February 2013 to November 16. And lastly, he's worked for Biocon on a senior level on the executive end from November 2016 to June 2021. He is also a member of various tax committees such as BCCI, CII, FICCI, and so on. Mr. Akela is also an active article writer in various tax forums such as TIOL, Tax Sutra. He addresses various tax issues. Aside our webinar, which he does regularly, he's also a speaker and panelist on various other forums for indirect tax matters. Mr. Akela comes with over 27 plus years of experience in the field of indirect taxes, with exposure in various industry verticals such as government, consultancy, other industries like auto, automobile, pharma, so on. Mr. Akela is currently practicing as an indirect tax advocate who assists multiple clients, several clients, in fact, on all aspects of indirect taxes at all levels. I take great pleasure in introducing him on yet another webinar. I have, in fact, lost count of our webinars. There was a time when I was actually keeping track of how many webinars we're doing, but it gives me absolute pleasure to have you here with us today, sir. I'm sure the audience is looking forward to directly hearing from you. Over to you, sir, Mr. Akela.
Yeah, thank you for all of you to take time off and to join in this session. I am seeing a good number of interest, but I think that if it is interactive only, then it is going to be useful for you, because as is my way, that I will be rushing through the slides in order to have more time for you to raise your queries and to answer it, because the cracking of the code, the title, as it suggests, that if it is really hard for you, then we need to do all that. But if it is a routine thing, then there is nothing more that I can add value to you. Hence, my request to you is that be ready with your queries. And in the meanwhile, if you have any questions and all, already 2 participants have given questions in the Q&A box. And there I can see some 2-3 questions in the chat box also. So wherever it is possible for you, please type out your questions so that at the end of the session, I will be taking them up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. We can start on.
Yeah, sure, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the agenda for today's session is going to be like this. That I am going to touch upon the basics of the GST invoicing. Then I will touch on the legal and regulatory provisions that are there, and what are the changes that were introduced, and what can be the future expectations for us. So this is going to be the flow. And most of it is going to be that understanding the basics of the e-invoice only, that I will be touching upon by touching all aspects of the e-invoicing. And then we can take up your Q&As. Okay. Yeah, next slide, please. Siddharth. Yeah. So the invoice or a GST bill is a list of goods sent or services provided along with the amount due for payment. A tax invoice is generally issued to charge the tax and pass on the input tax credit. So a GST invoice must have the following mandatory fields. So the basic purpose of a GST invoice, which we are all familiar with, is that it will list out what are the goods and services that we are going to provide. And along with that we also are going to display what is the amount due for payment, because that is the basic work that a GST invoice is expected to do. And same time, it is going to be useful for the tax authorities also to show exactly what is the tax that we are charging, and also what is the credit the receiver is going to take against that invoice. So there are some mandatory fields in the invoicing. So because to bring in some kind of a uniformity, that these mandatory fields are must, that anybody who issues a tax invoice have to have these mandatory fields in the invoice. So they are invoice number and date, and the customer's name and the shipping billing address, and then the customer and taxpayer's GSTN, place of supply, HSN code and SAC code, item details, description, quantity, unit, and total value, and the taxable value, and if any discounts are passed on. Because if the discounts are given later, that you know it, that you have to face the music from the authorities that they are not going to allow you. And the rate and amount of taxes, that the split up also should be there: CGST, SGST, UTGST, IGST, all that. And whether GST is payable on the reverse charge basis or not, also that you have to indicate. And then the signature of the supplier, which can be in a digital mode also. So these are the fundamental fields which are required to be displayed there. And you know it while generating the e-invoice on the government portal, that these fields are to be transmitted to the government so that they will verify, and after that only the QR code gets generated. So there are other things also which get added to this list, but primarily these are very important things. And mind you that if somebody is attending my webinars in the past also, that I have touched upon the GST invoicing in the past also, wherein I have told that the address field, actually, that you need to have at least 5 addresses. You may be surprised that why at all that there should be 5 addresses. One is that you being the registered service provider or the supplier for the goods. So your address will be there, and your customer's address obviously should be there. But there should be one more address from where the goods or services are going to be generated. Because it may not be the case that you may be having a centralized system where the invoicing is done, but actually the goods or services are going to be supplied from some other premises belonging to you. Say, for example, you are registered in Bangalore in the MG Road, but your factory is there in some other place in the industrial area. So that industrial area's address also should be there, and your corporate office's address also should be there, because the service or the goods are going, but the invoice is going to be generated from that location. So it is goods picked up from, that is what that we'll say in general parlance. And then the customer may say that you may give me the invoice, but the service or the goods are to be delivered to one of my locations, which is elsewhere. So that receiving address may be different from the billing address. So that is the fourth one. Sometimes it so happens that you may have to transfer the goods and you may have to indicate that such a transaction is happening to a third party on the request of your customer. So in such a scenario, even that person's address details are also required. So there are 5 address fields that you may need to have. Of course, depending on the necessity that you have at your end. Because if you are into having this kind of a businesses and all, maybe that you can structure it. Because why I am telling you this is, when you are designing your invoice, initially, if you don't take care of all these aspects, later on that it will be difficult for your ERP guys to design the invoice with all these features. That is the reason. If you have these options, but if you do not want to make use of it, then it will be easy. So that is the reason I'm just touching upon that aspect, that there can be 5 addresses in an invoice. The next slide, please. Siddharth, sir, next slide.
It's done, sir.
So if the recipient is not registered and the value is more than 50,000, then the invoice should carry the name and address of the recipient, and then the address of delivery, state name and state code. And in case of goods, the invoice needs to be issued on or before the removal or delivery of the goods. And in case of continuous supply of goods, invoice need to be issued on or before the date of issue of the accounting statement or the payment. But in case of services, invoice has to be issued within 30 days of supply of services. But in case services are rendered by banks and NBFCs, non-banking financial institutes and all, then the invoice has to be issued within 45 days of the supply of service. But for all the supplies made before the GST registration, you need to issue a revised invoice after taking the registration, but within 30 days of such registration. And there is no need to mention relevant invoice numbers while issuing the credit notes under GST. So these are some of the things which are there in your knowledge, but I'm just putting it on a slide for you. The next slide, please. So there is something called, previous slide, please.
Just one moment, sir. One moment.
Yeah. So there is something called bill of supply. So bill of supply is similar to the GST invoice, except for that bill of supply doesn't contain any tax amount, and the seller cannot charge the GST. So this is used in the case of composition dealers. So a bill of supply is issued in the cases where tax cannot be charged, and registered person is selling exempted goods or services, and when he is opted the composition scheme. So in such a case, whatever the invoice that gets issued, that is called bill of supply. It cannot be called as a GST tax invoice. And then there can be an invoice come bill of supply. So as per the notification 45 of 2017, if the registered person is supplying taxable as well as exempted goods or services to an unregistered person, mind you, it is to unregistered person, then he can issue a single invoice come bill of supply for all such supplies. Similar to the tax invoice, a bill of supply need not be issued when the value of goods or services supplied is less than 200 rupees, unless the receiver insists for the bill. However, a consolidated bill of supply should be prepared at the end of the business day for all such supplies which exceed that 200 amount. So that is one other thing that one needs to keep it in mind. Next slide, please. There is a concept called this aggregate invoice. Just now we were touching upon that subject, that whenever the invoice is not generated for the supplies which are less than 200 rupees, but you have to issue an aggregate invoice at the end of the day. So all multiple invoices below 200 rupees, you can consolidate, and one single invoice can be issued on a daily basis. Similarly, that whenever you are receiving any kind of invoice or service, particularly supply of services, that there is an obligation for you but to pay under reverse charge, then a self-generated invoice is to be there for the future audits. So the reverse charge invoice has to be printed at your end, and based on that, the RCM payment can be made in cash. And that is the document on which the input credit also can be avoided. So that is a reverse charge invoice. Next slide, please. Then there is something called credit note and debit note. So debit note is issued by the seller when the amount payable by the buyer to the seller increases, and the tax invoice has got a lower taxable value than the amount that should have been charged, and tax invoice has a lower tax value than the amount that should have been charged. So the debit note is basically issued whenever the price goes up, and the credit note issued when the price comes down. So in all such cases, that if the adjustments are happening in relation to the GST also, then only you need to issue a GST credit note or a GST debit note. But the debit note is issued only to comply with the accounting compliances. But as far as GST is concerned, the credit note is what is to be uploaded in the system. So credit note is most important. So the credit note, whenever there is a debit note, the counter credit note should also be issued because we follow the double accounting system. So the credit note is to be uploaded by the person who is issuing it in the IRN portal. But whenever the transactions are not going to have any kind of an impact on the GST tax amounts, then the settlement has to happen for closing your books. So in all such cases, that what you issue is a commercial credit note or a commercial debit note only. So these documents are widely used in all non-GST settlements where transaction doesn't have any kind of a GST implication, but it is needed for accounting purposes. And such documents will not have any GST related information and will be outside the purview of GST. So this is also a very important document for us that we should know when we have to issue a commercial credit note instead of a GST credit note. Because whenever you are issuing a GST credit note, there will be a bounded obligation for the recipient also to decrease his input tax credit so that the excess credit can be adjusted by the supplier at his end. Only when the credit has been adjusted at the recipient's end, the supplier can take the credit of it and then he can adjust it. Otherwise, not possible. Hence, a GST credit note and a commercial credit note, we should know in what circumstances that we can make use of and which one to be used also. The next slide, please. Yeah. So, handling revisions in the value of invoices already issued. That is basically done by the debit note or a credit note to revise the values. That is what we have explained. And then debit note or a supplementary invoice, that debit note is almost equal to an invoice only. So it is called, you can also call it as a supplementary invoice. And then credit note that we told that these are to be issued by the supplier to record a decrease in the taxable value or a GST charge in the original invoice, and it should be issued on or before 30th of September following the end of the financial year in which the supply was made, or the date of filing of the relevant annual return, whichever is earlier. Of course, this mandate has been extended till 30th of November very recently. And then debit notes and supplementary invoices and credit notes must include the following details: that nature of the document must be indicated prominently, whether it is a revised invoice or a supplementary invoice, and name and address and GSTN of the supplier, consecutive serial numbers containing only alphabets or numerals and special characters, and date of issue of document. If recipient is registered, then it's a registration particulars. If it is not, he is not registered, then name and address of the recipient and delivery address and state name and code, and serial number and date of original tax invoice or bill of supply. That is only for your reference, but legally not required, because credit note need not be related with the original invoice. That relaxation has been given by the government. And taxable value of the goods and rate of tax also, what is to be debited also should be displayed there. Next slide, please. Digital signature is obvious thing. Then GST, there are some rules which say that a tax invoice need not be issued when the value of the goods is less than 200, and if the recipient is unregistered, the recipient doesn't require an invoice. And then consolidated tax invoice or an aggregate invoice should be prepared at the end of each day for all such supplies. Similarly, handling of purchases from the URD, reverse charge invoice. In case of registered persons purchasing from the URD, the tax is paid by the recipient, and the recipient must issue an invoice on the date of receipt of the goods or services. And in case GST is payable under reverse charge, you must additionally mention the tax is paid under reverse charge on the GST invoice. Similarly, handling of advance payments, that you need to issue a receipt voucher. So when a registered dealer receives an advance payment for supply, the dealer should issue a receipt voucher for the advance paid by the recipient, because they are also going to be subjected to the GST. Next slide, please.
Sir, before you go to the next slide, is it okay if I launch one poll?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it might not be fully related to the slide, but let me just launch anyway. So audience, I'm just launching a poll for you. Let me know what you think. Does e-Invoice help in curbing tax evasion? Let us know from your point of view. We will have a few more polls launched as the session goes forward. I'd like to see maximum response on this. let's see how many people
That gives
can
an indication that whether you are attentive or just simply switched on your laptops and the webinar is playing on it, but you are not attentive. So I urge all people to take part in it. There are no marks, but certainly your time is appreciated.
Okay, we have 24 who have responded. Can we have my target number is 40, guys. So can we have 40 people actually attend this? 30, okay, 10 more to go.
Amit sir, thank you for participating.
Okay, all right, 32. Okay. Akela sir, shall we end the poll then?
Yeah, please. I'm unable to see that polling pattern.
Yeah,
now
I shared it now. Yeah.
Right.
So we have 20. Okay. So a majority of them think that yes, it is helping.
Yeah, this is exactly the feeling of the government also. That is the reason that they are insisting on the e-invoice. And you know the consequence of it, that from 1st of August 2023, that all those who are having a 5 crore turnover also are supposed to issue e-invoices only. So because the government is strongly believing that with e-invoice that the tax evasion can be curbed. So let us see how exactly it pans out in future. So next slide, please.
Yeah, sure, sir.
So handling exports effectively, that you need to have an export invoice, and it must, in addition to the details required in a tax invoice, contains that the supply meant for export on payment of GST or supply meant for export under bond or letter of undertaking without payment of GST. Because whenever you are doing an export, if the export is done under LUT, then you have to give your intention. Because this document is going to be useful while processing your refund claims also. So if you are going in for a refund on your exports, that if it is a refund of the IGST paid by you under the rebate mode, then you should specify your intention by putting these words: supply meant for export on payment of IGST under the claim of rebate. But if it is a LUT export, then you need to say supply meant for export under bond or letter of undertaking without payment of IGST. Then you have to specify the LUT number also, and the name and address of the overseas recipient or his agent, and name of the destination of the country and delivery address. And handling special deliveries, that you will be issuing delivery challans. These delivery challans are not having any kind of a GST, but that is also one of the documents for supply only. So the delivery challan can be issued in some special business cases, such as supply of liquid gas, where the quantity at the time of removal from the place of business of the supplier is not known, and transportation of the goods for job work, transportation of the goods for reasons other than supply, and any other notified supplies. See, when you send a goods on a returnable basis to a repairer, so you will be issuing a delivery challan only, because the goods are not having any kind of a, in this, it is not a supply which is going to be taxable, because after the repair, that the repairer is going to issue his service invoice for the repair charges. But when you are giving the goods for repair, that there is no taxable supply happening, but nevertheless, it should be evidence in the form of a document. So the document prescribed for such an issue is the delivery challan. So the delivery challan is also very key about document, wherein that you have to capture the details properly, so that when you are receiving it back, then there will be a cross correlation in order to identify the repaired item. So in such a scenarios, the delivery challan is going to be used. And similarly, the liquid gases and all, when you are supplying it, then the total quantity you will be coming to know only at the end, that once the recipient certifies that what is the received quantity, because there can be transmission losses, evaporation losses if the volatile liquids are supplied. So all such things, once they are taken care, then the actual quantity is going to be taxed, and the commercial value of it is going to be realized by issuance of a invoice. Next slide, please. Yeah. So legal provisions, there are many rules and sections which will touch upon, but I'm just touching on the important ones. That the definition is there under section 266 of the CGST Act, where an invoice or a tax invoice means the tax invoice referred to in section 31. Then section 31 details the tax invoice and there's an explanation which states that for the purpose of this section, a tax invoice shall include any revised invoice issued by the supplier in respect of the supply made earlier. Section 31 is a very elaborate section. So you can go through. I don't want to waste your time just by going through these sections and all that. And section 122 specifies certain penalties. So when the goods are supplied without an invoice or a bogus invoice is issued without any supplies underlying in it, and such a kind of things, then what can be the penalties and all that is there in section 122. Next slide, please. Yeah, section 132, that some of punishments are defined under this particular section. And then among the rules, that rule 46 talks about the tax invoice, 46A talks about the invoice and bill of supply, 47 talks about time limit for issuing tax invoice, and 48 is a manner of issuing the tax invoice, 53 talks about revised invoice, credit or debit note, and 54 talks about the tax invoice in special cases, 55 talks about the transportation of goods without issue of invoice, and 55A tax invoice or bill of supply to accompany the transport of goods. All these are there in the relevant rules that you can go through. Because that I want to save time just to take your questions, because those are the problems that you have in mind after going through the rules also. So I want to address that. So next slide, please.
Yeah. Sir, I will need 1 minute again.
Sure.
To launch a quick poll. So audience, I mean, you guys have been very engaging so far. I'm going to launch one poll, but it is not happening on Zoom. I am pasting a link on the chat for all of you. So I request all of you to just check your webinar chat quickly. So there is a link that I pasted. Now this will take you to our company's LinkedIn handle. We have a poll that is running now right there in lines of GST. So I request all of you to take exactly 30 seconds to 1 minute to quickly click on the link. It will redirect you to our LinkedIn page on your browser. Just attend the poll and come back here. I will read the poll. In fact, do you think e-Invoice helps in better compliances under GST? There are 3 options: yes, no, and not sure. So I request all of you to quickly go there and answer the question with your polls and come back here.
Your answers are going to help even the government also, because the government is constantly looking for the feedback on the initiatives that they have taken it. Correct. So e-Invoice happens to be the wonderful invention of introduction of the GST in India. So it was unheard of in the erstwhile tax regime, but in the GST, yes, e-Invoice has helped a lot in consistently. You are able to see that at the end of the month, we are consistently seeing that the collections for the GST for the month are exceeding 1.5 lakh crores every month. That is all due to the efforts of the e-invoicing only, which you all have embraced.
Okay, let me just quickly check, sir, how many of them have actually attended there. Okay, not bad. We have 8 people who attended. So that should be fine. If there's anyone else who would like to attend it later, please click on the link and you can attend it back. So I will hand it over to Kira, sir. I'll go to the next slide. You can take it forward.
So some of the FAQs that I'm just giving you a hint with because that you can come with your own queries so that I will be able to answer it. That what is the difference between invoice date and the due date? So the invoice serial number must be maintained strictly. So you may change the format by providing a written. Invoice date refers to the date when the invoice is created on the bill book, while the due date is when the payment is due on the invoice. Similarly, that can I digitally sign the invoice? Yes, you can. And can an invoice be made in any currency? Yes, invoice can be made in any currency. Similarly, is it mandatory to maintain invoice serial number? Yes, the invoice serial number has to be maintained. And if there is any invoice which gets cancelled also, then that particular serial number, you have to record it as cancelled and not transacted. So these may appear to be very silly, but they are very, very important clarifications. One must need to keep it in mind. So there are hundreds of questions like this. I'm just giving you a pointer because that I don't want to take your time just to rush through the text and all that, but rather attend to your practical difficulties. So the next slide, please. So latest changes, somebody had asked what are the latest changes. See, from 1st of August, that 5 crores turnover, all those people have to start generating e-Invoice. And recently, from 1st of May, actually, it was supposed to, that only 7 days time limit has been given to report the invoices on the e-Invoice IRP portal for all those exceeding the annual aggregate turnover. AATO, you might have come across this in the newspapers also, that annual aggregate turnover of 100 crores. But for reasons best known to them, that the government has taken this decision and wanted to implement it from 1st of May, but there could be some kind of a backlash with which that they have deferred it by 3 months. So May, June, July, maybe 1st of August, it can be a reality because somebody is curious to know that when is this going to happen. So I say, in all likelihood, it may be happening from 1st of August. So as per notification 78 of 2020, that it is mandatory for the taxpayers to mention 6-digit HSN code for their outward supplies having annual aggregate turnover of more than 5 crores. So for many people that it is going to have an impact. So you need to know what is your HSN and up to 6 digits. It should be correct up to 6 digits because that's what is most important. In India, many of the classification battles are only on digit number 5, 6, 7, 8. These 4 digits always contribute to a lot of litigation on the classification matters. Because the first 4 digits, universally, everybody will agree. But the problem starts happening from 5th digit to 8th digit only. So one must be very careful while classifying their products, because that is going to decide the taxability of the item and the credit eligibility in the hands of your customer also. Next slide, please. Yeah, so it is not that I'm forecasting or that I just wanted to frighten you, but it is going to be a reality that the entire ecosystem of GST will operate through e-invoicing in future. So irrespective of the annual aggregate turnover, everyone who wants to do a GST transaction has to generate a e-invoice. A day will come. So we are discussing on this 19th May 2023. So in 2024, that yes, a day will be there, then everybody is operating through e-invoices only. And there will be more stringent regulations like immediate reporting of invoices of the e-invoicing IRP portal. Now you might have seen that 1st of May, the government wanted to implement this, that 7 days of reporting period, which has been deferred by 3 months. But in very short duration, I think that the reporting has to be immediate, will be the necessity. And then it is suggested that the entire supply chain is onboarded for issuance of the digital invoicing and the e-waybill integration. The matching criteria can be largely addressed. Is one suggestion from my end. After seeing the entire indirect taxes over 3 decades, I'm telling you that what you need to have is that now that only compliant vendors that you can have. Our non-compliant vendors, if you are dealing with them, then you have bright chances that you will not be able to get your full input tax credit. In such a scenario, what needs to be done is that you should encourage all your suppliers to onboard on the e-invoicing platform so that seamless integration will happen, and using the digital means, the invoice sharing also can happen on a real-time basis. So once your supplier has generated a e-invoice, then the document without any time loss can be shared with you immediately along with the copy of the e-waybill. Then you can start monitoring whether the goods or the services are received at your end, because by that time you already have a document. So any kind of a processing also that you can undertake before actually the goods arrive. On the document side, if you have got any kind of an objections, you can sort it out before the supplies are received at your end. And once the supplies are received at your end, you can cross-verify whether the quantity, quality, other parameters are suiting your requirement. And immediately the GRN can be done and then it can be sent for payment processing. So if the entire vendor, the entire supply chain is onboarded for issuing of the digital invoices only, then this is going to be possible. And second thing, if such a scenario is there, then what happens that whatever is the GSTR1 at his end will be the GSTR2A at your end. So the matching concept also will be very easy for you. But if somebody issues manual invoices or other than the invoices and all, then that you have to physically go through and then you have to verify and then match it. Or otherwise that a lot of protracted communication will happen and then it may lead to loss of credit during that month for you. So I strongly urge that you take the help of any of these service providers and then you digitize your systems, and not only your systems but your entire supply chain also, so that it is going to be a win-win situation, that even for him also the compliances will be easy, and for you the ITC matching and other problems will not be there. And then before the supply receives you, the document errors can be corrected at your end also, and at your supplier's end also, and it is going to help you in a seamless credit processing. So I strongly urge that you should be taking the help of any of these service providers. And incidentally, Web in his introduction that he also mentioned that they have got the facility for the e-invoicing, compliances and other things also. So you just have a look at it and then you can take a call. But don't lose the opportunity of going digital, because that is what is important for the future. I think I came to an end of my presentation. Now I will be happy to address your queries one after the other, but I will be taking up the queries from the chat box and then I will be moving to the Q&A also. But in the meanwhile, if anybody has got any queries, please drop them in the Q&A box so that it will be easy for us to tackle them. And Siddharth, if you have got any other poll query, that you can go ahead.
Sure, sir. Sure. Yeah, I think I can start from the chat. Mr. Arnab has asked a question, because before that I kept track. They're not the questions. In case of a new GST registration, clarification has been raised. GST officials conducted field visit at the business premises before clarification is filed. Now, should clarification be filed or not is what you're asking, sir.
See, whenever you have a query in writing, my suggestion is that you give it in writing only. You have to reply it in writing. Yes, there was a clarification sought. Officers have made a visit and they must have noted whatever may be their observations. So you are still not got the registration. That is where that you are worried. Why? Because in the system, the question is there that they are not going to answer, because they can only raise a question, but they cannot answer themselves. Observations and all that they can write it later. So you are mandated to submit your reply, written reply. In your written reply, if you do not have anything more to add, that you can certainly say the officers have physically visited on so-and-so date and made these observations. If they have issued any letter to you, you can upload it. But whatever it is, that there should be a reply from your end. So I strongly suggest that you kill the question because it has come in writing, by way of a reply in writing only. Yeah, there is one observation from Nagesh that if we can raise invoice for old period, if missed out within 1 week restriction, then any request comes from any B2B, but we cannot generate. Just a minute, I think I missed out. Yeah, if any request comes from any B2B party, then we have considered their transaction as B2C. In our GSTR1, portal will allow to amend this invoice from B2C to B2B, but we cannot generate e-invoice because of new restriction which is going to come. You are right, your observation. See, when the new restriction comes, what they want is any settlement that you have to do it within those 7 days. And after that, you immediately generate a e-invoice. But once the e-invoice is generated, you also know that e-invoice can be amended within 24 hours of its generation, but not after that. Hence, if it is to be cancelled, then you have to nullify it by way of credit note. issue a credit note, nullify the original invoice, and regenerate a fresh invoice with the correct data. That's the only way that you have to do. But if the request comes later, that though the portal is allowing in the past, because from B2C to B2B, portal will allow, because that they are going to receive the money and it will be going into the credit pool and all that, because B2C is direct money to the government. B2B means it is money has to be given to the receiving party, so that if he is entitled for the ITC, that he will be in a position to avail it. So it is going to be a major change. But yes, after this 7 days restriction of uploading the invoices in the IRN portal, that you don't have much of a time, so you have to be very quick. In case of a new registration, I think Arnab's query that we have answered it. And then
I'll read out the next one, sir. One from Mr. Raghunandan. April month RCM payment is made in April. When can I claim that April month RCM? Is it in May, or is what he's asking, sir? I do not. This
is a very big debate which is going on. The minute you have a invoice in your hand and the supplies are there and all those other conditions of credit availment are fulfilled at your end, there is nobody who can stop you from availing the credit. But I do not know why at all that we are continuing the business for the future also. So why at all that you have to hurry and take that credit in the same month? So if you can defer it for the next month and take it, no harm. But if you are really short of money and your CFO is hell-bent on that each penny counts, and there will be a lot of discussions on it, then maybe that you can take it, because there is no hard and fast rule, and this was debated in several of the matters also. But there is no clear-cut instruction which says that the RCM payment can be taken in the same month, because there are many to it. Like I'll tell you that when is the payment that you are doing will be known to the government only when you file the GSTR 3B, which happens on 20th of every month. So in a month, say in the April month, if you have made a payment of RCM before 20th, then you will be reporting on the portal on 20th itself. So on 20th itself, if you want to take a credit, it will create a kind of a situation for you wherein that you are showing the cash deposit and the same thing that you are again availing it as an ITC credit. But if you can defer it to May, then maybe it will be very easy that in the month of April, the payment is done. In the month of May, the credit is taken. So there is nothing wrong that you can do. But suppose there is a situation wherein after 20th of April, you made a RCM payment. So how on earth that the government will know that you have made a payment after 20th? Because after 20th, if you have made any kind of a payment, then you cannot capture it in the April 20th filing of the GSTR 3B. So it will be difficult to justify the case that unless the government comes to know that some credit has come, then it has to be passed on to so-and-so party, because it is a B2B and there is no 17.5 problems are there on it, then only the credit transfer will be smooth. So I urge that if there is no hurry for you and there is no such kind of a pie-to-pie kind of a reconciliation by your finance team and all, then you pay it in this month and safely take it in the next month in order to avoid any kind of a questioning during the audits and the confusion that you will also have in your accounting. But if you are closing down the business or really short of money and the RCM payments are used for you, and that is what is you have to use it for your discharging your output tax liability in the same month. If you take it also, you are not violating any law, but yes, there will be some kind of questioning, answering, all that and all will be there for you. Hope I have answered you. Next question, please.
Yeah. One from Mr. Sandeep. One need to project the turnover for the year to go ahead with this applicability of 100 crore. Mr. Sandeep,
so you need not to do any kind of projections and all that. It is the annual aggregate turnover of the previous year. If it exceeded 100 crores, then now that the 7 days period and all, if you are referring to that matter. But if it is to do with something else, that you have to tell us. But it is not about the projections, because GST doesn't work on projections. Yeah. Is it mandatory to make e-Invoice for export of repaid goods under mover scheme? I think it's a bit complicated question. See, e-invoice is mandatory whenever you are doing any kind of a taxable supplies and your turnover in the previous year is more than 10 crores under, whether you are mover or EOU, SEZ, it doesn't matter. E-invoice is a must. For export of repaired goods. So if you have already received the goods and you are returning the goods to your overseas customer, that is what is the sense that is there in your question. That's what I have understood. Export of repaired goods. So goods are already repaired at your end and you are exporting it back to the customer. So is it mandatory? Yes, if it is going to be a taxable supply is there, then you have to do it. But I'm wondering that in a mover scheme also that you are undertaking the repairs and all that. If it is the other way around, that you are sending some goods for repair abroad, then also that it is going to be a taxable supply and the goods are crossing the customs frontiers. Yes, e-invoice is required because export invoice will be generated. Can we have two registrations in the same state? Sandeep is asking. Yes, sir, perfectly. But the only thing is all your DTAs in the same state will have only one registration and those EOUs and DTAs will have one single registration. But if you are operating as an SEZ also, then that registration will be different in the same state. But otherwise, all other than SEZs, all your DTA, EOUs, everything will have one single registration only. But there will be additional place of businesses in that registration certificate to cover all the places. So two registrations in the same state is possible if somebody is operating as an SEZ and others. Others includes DTA, EOU, etc. So Suresh is asking, please clarify whether credit note can be issued for previous year original invoices in the next financial year. Any time limit prescribed for issuance of credit note. Sir, I have covered this in my presentation also, that the timelines are November 30th or date of filing of your annual return, whichever is earlier. Beyond that, the adjustments are not possible for you. I think I have covered all the queries that are raised in the chat box.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now I am moving on to the
Q&A.
So wherein is there any mechanism by which we can validate IRN of vendors invoice while bill passing on regular basis? What I'm able to understand from this query is that when your vendor is issuing an e-invoice, so you want to validate that IRN. Yes, certainly there are some equipment which is available which can read the QR code, just like even with your handheld mobile phones also, that if a QR reader is there, then you can check all the details and all. But validation means again that if you want to check it on the portal, I doubt that anybody will be able to provide such a kind of a thing. But definitely the details and other things that you can cross-check using the QR code reader at your end. So that's what I was able to understand from this question, that why at all that you required a validation, that if you are suspecting that the vendor is going to issue a bogus QR code invoice to you, hence you want to validate it. If that is the query, that you please come back, sir, on the chat so that I can answer it. For the time being, I'm feeling that I have answered your question. I'm moving to another of your questions. Effect of not mentioning IRN on invoice by vendor, but later e-invoice generated by vendor in lots and reflected in the GSTR 2B. So you have to warn this kind of transactions, sir, because now the new regulation of reporting it in 7 days is also come. So simply supplying the goods without a e-invoice when it is mandated for that supplier is against the rules, because based on such invoices, though you are in receipt of the goods, you are not good to avail ITC. And if he is going to make good later, but that later period should not be beyond 7 days. If his turnover is more than 100 crores, and if it is on or after 1st of August. So keep these in mind. But better that you talk to these particular vendors, not to resort to such kind of an adjustments at a later time. Dear sir, request to clarify on additional place of services is mandatory for adding in GST registration for banking companies, since we have a lot of banking outlets and customer service points. Yes, sir, without any kind of a hesitation, because one must know that the authorities should know that where from all that you are rendering taxable services. So it is always suggestible to add, even if the registration certificate goes into hundreds of pages, but I suggest that you should do it. Is there any timeline for issue of credit notes against the transactions related to previous financial year and subsequent financial year? Original invoice issued in 2022, credit note is to be issued in 2023. I told you already that on or before filing of your annual return or November 30th of the subsequent year. Query from Lakshmi, please let me know that export invoice is mandatory to generate e-invoices and also B2C and SEZ. No, export invoices, yes, but B2C and SEZ currently that they have not specified any rules, so you need not. And then should we raise e-invoice for sale of assets and scrap? See, once e-invoice is applicable for you because of your annual aggregate turnover, for any supply, taxable supply, you have to issue e-invoice only. Can we amend B2C, B2B and same B2B, B2B in case of e-invoicing case? I told you that there are strict timelines within 24 hours of generating your IRAN, you can do it. Otherwise that you will not be, you have to counter it by way of a credit note and adjust it. Invoice date and e-invoice date are differ by 2-3 days. Is that okay? Yes, within 7 days that it is okay, but not beyond. How to avail the import duty refund, because earlier it was credited to our ECL. Now some changes happened. I do not know what is the change that you are talking about, and import duty refund when it is coming into the ECL, what exactly is the change and why you are not getting? If you can specify, maybe that I will be able to answer. For the time being, I'm closing this, but if you have any further query or clarification that you please, you can just raise your hand, so that we'll give you an opportunity to talk to me. Is it mandatory to make e-invoice for export of goods after repair under mover? I think that I have answered your question.
Yeah.
And its return, yes. Its return means that you will not be raising an invoice, sir, Manish, that the invoice will come from your overseas supplier. So I think I have taken all the questions from the Q&A also.
Yeah, sir. So what we can do now is, since we still have some time, we can take up queries from people.
Yes. Live queries, if anybody wants to, then I'm okay for it.
Yes. So audience, if there's anyone who would like to unmute and talk directly to the speaker, I will be able to do that. I think we already have one. Mr. Subramani, was that you? Yeah, okay. I can just allow you to talk, and yeah, you can unmute, sir.
Yeah, there is one question which has come in the meanwhile, that if cancelled the GST, no suo motu, the GST number suo motu, department can issue new GST number on the same PAN? Of course, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Sir, I had sent a mail in the morning in your email ID. I don't know whether you saw it. My question is not related to e-invoice. Question is that we had re-exported some goods which was found to be defective, and we submitted a duty drawback application to Customs under Section 74 of Customs Act. And we also gave a declaration that we are not avail IGST code against that bill of entry against which the goods was imported. And we have given a CA certificate also to that effect that the IGST code has not been taken. Customs are insisting that I have to get a certificate from a jurisdictional GST office that the IGST credit has not been availed. And despite all our efforts, we are not able to get that document from GST. We need your advice as to how we can get this drawback settled without getting the non-availment certificate from GST authorities.
The first thing that you said that you have sent a mail to me in the morning.
No, sir, and the WEP, there was one mail I sent it, and I'm not too sure whether it was the correct email ID, what I spoke in the chat.
Okay. Was it on it?
Okay.
Because I did not receive anything. I'm not sure.
No, this is a core issue that under Section 74, we have submitted a duty drawback application, and the customs insistent that unless the DC of the jurisdictional GST office gives a non-availment certificate that IGST has not been availed against that bill of entry, they cannot process the drawback claim. And we are not able to produce it because due to practical challenges, it's very difficult to get certain types of documents from the departmental office center. So is there any legal solution by which we can pursue the claim with customs and
Strange, sir. Yes, that on the bill of entry, you have not availed the input credit. If somebody is asking you to produce a certificate, then yes, practically it is not possible. But the department is processing many Section 74 drawback claims. So why only in your case that they are raising this kind of a query, sir? Is there any specific reason? Is it the first time that you are filing a drawback application, or the amount is very huge?
The amount is quite large.
How much?
And we have also written to GST office, and we have interacted with GST office saying that this is a CA certificate which has been given by our company auditor, and we are declaring that IGST.
No, but your input credit, the IGST taken on it is running into hundreds of crores or what?
No, it's about 11 crores, 11 lakhs.
11 lakhs. It's nothing for them. When they are dealing with crores of rupees of drawbacks, 11 lakhs, that they should not be insisting on this kind of, because it is a Herculean task. Yes, you have done a good thing that you have issued a CA certificate, and maybe that all the 3Bs wherein that you have taken the credit and all, if you can furnish during that period, maybe that should suffice them. No, from the period that you have received the goods to the period when you have sought the drawback claim. So during that period only you should have availed this credit, which is going to be against the drawback rules. So all those 3B justification workings that you can furnish it to the authorities.
Sir, what I can do is I can take an extract of the GSTR 9 what I filed for the particular financial year.
No, 9 will be having for the whole year.
And substantiate it with all the monthly 3B returns and whatever debit note, credit note that we have issued at the end of the year. So I can provide indirect evidence that the data given in the annual return tallies with my monthly returns and the adjustments made in the end of the year, and whether this will be legally accepted or is there any other challenge?
No, there is absolutely no challenge as such that, see, you should not have availed the IGST in order to claim the drawback. That is what is the rule says. So if you can establish on paper that the IGST credit has not been availed at your end, that is good enough. So it can be direct, indirect, anything. Right? But it should be evidence on paper. That is the only requirement. So if you can furnish all these details to their satisfaction, I don't think that you will be having an issue.
Sir, we are having a challenge because the superintendent says that
maybe, sir, in this
the data appears on GSTR 2A. We have told them also GSTR 2A is not a document on the basis of which I am eligible to take.
No, you are entitled to take a credit, but whether you have really taken the credit or not has to be verified at your end.
We have not taken because we knew it that it was a wrong supply, and then we had an interaction with supplier and re-exported it back.
Maybe that this has to be taken offline, sir, and maybe that you need to engage some consultant for sorting out this.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Right. Any other queries?
Okay. Anyone else would like to interact with Mr. Akela on the question? Anyone else? You can give me a yes on chat, or you can just raise your hand. I'll be able to allow you to talk.
See, GST invoice is something which is appears to be that known to everybody and everybody has understood because that extensively we are dealing with it. But when we really deal with the document and when we face this kind of a problems, like the way that our friend now Subramani Anantakrishnan is facing a problem in the drawback. So such a kind of issues can come up. So we should be well aware of the legal provisions and then timelines and what are the mandatory fields and how exactly we should go about, and the way that some of the people have asked that how to get the IRN validation, and then how do we know that the vendor has paid his taxes so that my credit is not going to be denied in my hands and all that. You need to have a very good service provider who can give you this kind of ratings also, which the government has actually proposed, but not many people are really understanding the importance of it. And even the service providers also, I think in India, some 2-3 service providers are giving this kind of a ratings for the client, the GST registrant, wherein that they will see that his complaints rating, it is called. So wherein that how much that he is complying with the laws, to what extent, whether he is filing the returns in time, and whether the returns accuracy is above 99% or not. These kind of aspects that they will see, and as per that, some ratings are being given. So it is better that if we take such kind of a help from such portals, then we will be able to know. Because if we are dealing with a non-compliant vendor or a customer, it is always a problem for the business. Yeah, I'm not seeing much of questions. Yes, Suresh has come back again, that any solution in GST portal to transfer the credit from one state to another state. Not possible, sir. To answer Suresh, that if you have got any transaction between these two registrations belonging to you, then you make a interstate supply and then you transfer the credit. Because related party transaction valuation is not something which the government will be really keen about. So maybe that you can take advantage. I cannot elaborate in an open session like this, but yes, there is a way in which it can be done, but not the way that you are thinking, that transferring the credit by click of button. GST 9 will be filed when the registered person wants to cancel the registration. It is not GSTR 9, I believe, sir. It is a 10, the final return it is called. Yes, when you want to cancel the registration, whatever the goods that are remaining, on that you need to decide whether you are going to sell them off before the cancellation of the registration, or that whatever the credit that is partially lying on those goods has to be remitted back to the government, or that if you want to forego, that intention has to be there, hence that they will insist on filing the final return before cancellation. You are right, but the number is not that. It is not 9, I think it is 10. Anyone else has got any other questions?
Yeah. If there's anyone else who would like to interact, unmute and talk, please raise your hand. We're almost coming to the end of the session, but
yeah, even then also 65% of the participants are still with us, eagerly waiting for others' queries so that you will get enriched. Yeah. But I say that for discussion sake also, that we can raise questions when we have time, we can discuss. But if practically, if you are facing a problem, better opportunity that we can discuss in detail.
Yeah.
But again and again, I will be insisting on in all my webinars that digitization is the way forward in future, sir. So don't rely on the manual reconciliations, manual generation of these e-invoices, e-way bills, tracking and all that. Because as your business grows, then it will be difficult for you. And also, even if your business is small, but the number of years you put on, then keeping track of the past details will be a difficulty. So it is always better to be with some ASP, GSP solution providers so that the digital records are maintained at your end, and you will be able to face the future audits successfully. And incidentally, in my last webinar also, I made a request that if you are interested in any particular topic which can be taken up for a discussion and a useful question answer session we can have, then you can suggest those topics to the web team so that we will consider, and then we can arrange the next webinars on those lines. Yes, because that always that what we do, that what is the attention grabbing topic for that month that we'll be picking up, and we'll be elucidating on that, and we'll be taking questions. Of course, the questions are never confined to the subject of the webinar, but we are touching upon everything. That's okay. But in future, if somebody has got a good idea, maybe that it is most welcome, such suggestions, so that we can cover those topics also. So if there are no further questions, I think it is time for us to say goodbye because it's a long weekend ahead for us. So if there are no questions from my end, that I wish you all a very happy weekend. GSTR 1 and 3B filing table for the next webinar.
Okay.
Okay, we'll consider.
Filing table. Okay, I have noted. We can talk about this, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what I would request is all of you, if you can. So one thing is you will be redirected to a survey form after the webinar. If you can suggest the topics that you'd like to hear in the upcoming webinars, please put that in remarks. That will help me a lot. So based on that, we can work and come back.
Yeah. So a big thank you for all of you that have stayed till now and then had your patience hearing, and you provided your valuable time also.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akela.
Happy weekend.
Yeah,
bye.
Thanks a lot. And thanks everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.